Hello and welcome everyone to Coach for Mind, India's first mental health podcast, and I'm your co-host Yuti Bharadwaj. This is a platform where we come up with insightful discussions every week so that all of us can together reduce the stigma around conversations regarding mental health, healing, emotional pain, or even seeking support. And today we have come up with a very important topic that genuinely requires more clarity and a deeper level of understanding. And the question for all of us today is that why is it so hard to get over toxic relationships, move on from them, and continue to create beautiful lives for ourselves, which still holds a lot of beauty for us, but we somehow fail to see that and fall in a pattern that is not healthy for us. And to be able to find beautiful answers to this really deep and confusing question, please help me welcome the founder of this podcast and a licensed clinical psychologist himself, Mr. Lekh Bajaj. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Diti. Always a wonderful introduction by you.
Yeah.
So, yes, I think this is our second video on relationships.
Yeah.
But I think again a very important topic for these times, and
definitely.
A lot of confusion is actually around relationships. So hopefully this will reach out to a lot of people and people will get some good insights.
Yeah, definitely. And just like I mentioned in the last video also, which was in relationships, that a lot of our mindset is based on what we see in the movies and web series. So it's very important to have genuine content that talks about real, raw relationships and how to actually live them rather than in our fantasy world of things.
Yeah.
So just like we always structure our videos and conversations from the very basic, we have talked about what is love, what is loneliness, what is anxiety. So I would like to ask a very similar question here. We are talking about toxic relationship. So what is the toxicity in that relationship? What are we referring to as toxic? And what is actually the thing that leads to a relationship becoming toxic?
So because this topic was very slightly technical also, because like otherwise the word toxic can go to multiple dimensions. So I have like properly structured my thoughts using my notes. So don't mind me looking at my notes. Yeah.
Definitely. And I think it's very important to get a structured and to move towards clarity, we should break things down like this. So the way you explain things, I think it's adorable and it just clarifies things in our head. So we're very excited.
Yes. So I try to make sense of what a toxic relationship might look like. So using a metaphor, consider relationship is like a road. So like in India, there are roads with all the bumps and gaddes around. So consider relationship like a road. You hardly will find a road in India. And I think roads in India is a very good example of how relationships are. No road is without bumps. No relationship is without conflicts. It's only about what's the percentage of कि गड्ढे कितने हैं और रोड कितनी. अगर once in a while कोई bump आ रहा है, conflicts आ रहे हैं, गड्ढे आ रहे हैं, that is a good enough relationship. But a time comes when road कम है, गड्ढे ज़्यादा है. That is when we can say a relationship is becoming toxic. Good times are much less than the bad times, and bad times are covering most of the relationship. Then we can call it a toxic relationship.
Okay. Yeah, I remember you mentioned a similar thing in the last video about relationships as well. You cannot quantify it that well, but yeah, you can feel that within yourself that how am I feeling most of the time in a relationship.
Yes. And again, sometimes there can be phases, maybe few days are really bad or few. But if it is happening for a very long duration, for example, if I say 6 months, and then you look back at last 6 months or 1 year, and you see that most of the time the two people in the relationship were fighting or were very angry or very sad or very hurt, then it is time to question, is it becoming toxic? And again, toxic doesn't mean that it should end. But at least it gives us that something needs to be worked upon.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so when you gave me this question to ponder about, I was thinking that I felt that isn't it hard to get over any relationship? So like in what ways getting over a toxic relationship is different and more difficult than a normal relationship where people end up deciding to break up with each other?
So I think I'll answer this question in two different parts. One is like why a relationship become toxic in the first place, and then how it impacts us, which makes it difficult. So why a relationship is toxic is because there is a lot of and I think this is very important point. The term I will use is conditional affection. So every relationship has affection. Both the people involved are very affectionate towards each other. They love, care about each other. But when it becomes a conditional affection, which happens very subconsciously, people might not be doing it. So, and a toxic relationship doesn't mean one partner is toxic and the other is not. It is one is more toxic and the other is less toxic. Because it's the relationship which is toxic, not the people involved. One might be more toxic than the other, but in the toxic relationship, both the people naturally become a little bitter towards each other. So what they start to do is they start to, maybe one person might do it more often than the other. They start to provide affection, be nice to the other person, caring, empathetic to the other person, only if they behave the way they want to be. That if you do how I expect you to be, then I'm nice to you, otherwise I'll be complaining, I'll be hurt, I'll be angry, and I'll, in a way, maybe sometimes subconsciously play with your feelings. So this conditional affection is what makes, and I think this is even for our audience, it's important that we should contemplate, are we conditionally affectionate to our partner? That if they behave the way we want, then we are happy and caring and loving. And even like the same toxicity can be there in parent-child relationship also. Sometimes parents they only provide love when the child behaves according to them. Then those are like seeds of toxicity, and then it really affects our feelings and personality overall, be it with a parent or be it with a romantic partner, because both these are very intimate and close relationship.
So like I've also heard that most of these patterns that we pick up is during our childhood. So this also affects us, right? Like if our parents are providing that conditional affection to us, we eventually end up becoming that kind of a person when we grow up.
Yes, very good point you picked up. So it might be that the person who is so-called we are calling as the toxic person in the relationship, they might have learned it from their parents, and then they continue to do it with their partner as well. But again, coming to your question, that why it's different from moving on from a normal relationship is that the relationship fluctuates a lot, and like it's not always the case, but most of the time toxic relationship starts with a very intense, high and passionate emotions, and it feels like a different world, and in no time the toxic pattern starts to come up. So the highs, the good times that we are so rare after a point of time, that it becomes as if everything suddenly becomes wonderful, and then suddenly everything goes down the drain. And so it's very intense. So highs are very incredible, and then we sometimes keep pushing, okay, we'll figure it out. We try to push away the lows, because again, normally a normal relationship goes like this. A toxic relationship goes like this. So that is one reason. Apart from that, because there is a lot of blaming involved. So when let's say a person decides that this is a toxic relationship, I don't want to continue it, the other person would blame you that you are ruining this relationship, or blame you that you are hurting me by ending this, which puts the other person in guilt, and they keep pushing the ending of a relationship. So I think guilt is very important part in a toxic relationship, that you are not able to end it because you keep feeling guilty that I am hurting the other person, or they might blame me that you are ruining it. And out of that guilt, we keep pushing. Okay. Another reason is that the person who is like more of a victim of a toxic relationship, although that person, he or she also becomes slightly toxic being in that relationship, that person distances from their friends who can like point out the red flags, or even if the breakup were to happen, we need a support system. Those friends won't be around to support us, because toxic relationship is very consuming in nature. It's most of the time that is running in your mind, and you are not able to maintain a healthy social life or a family life.
I think first relationships, like something like this happened, like when you're firstly dating someone in the very beginning and all you have is that ideologies from the movies, then you just are drowned in those emotions, in those like wondering and imagining stuff. So like, is it true that the first relationship or the initial phases, if when we are first of all like getting out and experiencing these things about the dating life and relationship, is it true that everyone goes through that phase, like of overly attached, being attached, like always wondering and imagining?
Yes.
Does that happen?
So,
okay.
Yes, I think it's either you learn it over time or you learn it over 1 or 2, 3 relationships. That's unhealthy to only make relationship your whole life. Even in the college, I knew that there used to be some couples who were like just all about each other. वो पढ़ेंगे भी साथ में, everything will be together, they will be in the same club, which I think it has a potential to become toxic after a while. It might help really feel very good initially, because you need a social life, you need a life apart from your relationship, which is very important.
Okay. Yeah, I can actually connect to it because I was just watching an episode of The Big Bang Theory, and there Amy says that I am afraid that I'll lose my individuality when I'm married to you. And they understood, like they addressed that fact that this is also important.
True.
Yeah. Okay, so like if we can recognize what's causing the toxicity in a relationship, because we've talked a lot about like one person can be more toxic. Basically, it's their patterns, it's their actions, activities, the thought processes that are creating the toxicity. And if two people can sit together, like if they're fighting a lot, if they're experiencing those bad days a lot, and if they can sit together and like look at it and be able to realize that this is what is causing this toxicity, this behavioral pattern is leading to these results and such toxic environment between us, then can we not work it through together and heal the pain and move past it together? Like, should we end it? Like, how to decide it?
So it is possible to work on a toxic relationship and improve it, but it is difficult, no doubt. It is difficult as compared to a normal relationship conflicts. So it's not easy to make a choice. The person who is in this situation gets very confused. He or she tries a lot to work on the relationship. So I would again say it's possible but difficult. So in case a person or both the people are able to understand that yes, we have certain toxic patterns and we want to work on it. So there are a few suggestions that I would give. One is that as soon as you realize that the toxicity is there, start to take some time off the relationship individually to contemplate and self-reflect that where are the problems in the relationship. And maybe a very good suggestion would be to list down the problems. And while listing, because the natural thing is, okay, that person is the problem, that person is the problem. So try to focus on both the sides and look at relationship dynamics as the problem, not individuals as the problem. Otherwise, again, especially in a toxic relationship, it's very easy to say that the problem is the other person. They are not doing this, they are doing this. So it's better to list down the problems, that what is my contribution to the toxicity, what is the other person's contribution, and not to be very biased. So taking time off can definitely help. Sometimes it happens that the toxic relationship are very long standing, maybe 4 years, 8 years, sometimes even marriages are toxic. So especially in those cases, people can seek professional help. We sometimes call it relationship counseling, couples therapy. That can actually be very transformative, because the therapist or a counselor can be that mediator to resolve certain toxic patterns, and also help to recognize those toxic patterns and certain ways to work on those, which might be very difficult for people themselves to figure them out and figure a way out. So professional help can be sought. But I think fundamentally non-blaming communication is something that is the way out. But again, it is difficult, not impossible. But sometimes even after trying, nothing is working, then the only option left is to end the relationship, unfortunately. Yeah, because just continuing with the toxic patterns is not the way out. Either work on it, either seek professional help. If nothing works, then ending is needed.
Yeah, that's true. So, so when we decide, now it's time to end it. So how should we deal with the end of such a relationship in the most healing-oriented manner for both the people involved?
Yes, so again, this, I think some points that I'll share are common to any kind of breakup to move on, and some points are relevant to especially moving on from a toxic relationship. So one is closure. I think this is something which in general is a very important thing. People don't recognize the importance of a closure. Closure is very important in a relationship. In a normal breakup where it's not too toxic, both people can talk to each other and give closure to each other why it ended. But mostly in toxic relationship, seeking closure from the partner is not the right way, because that will again might consume you. Okay, let's give it another try. So this is a very common pattern in toxic relationship. You keep on trying again and again, and even seeking closure might be like, okay, let's give it another try, which might not help. So finding closure on your own through self-reflection. Again, seeing your part in the toxicity, seeing the other person's part in the toxicity, and then making sense of why it was not meant to be. And we have tried our best and still it's not working. So being through that process is very important. And at the same time, your emotions would fluctuate. They will oscillate. You might sometimes miss that person. You might miss the good times. As we discussed earlier, good times are also very high. So you might miss those times. And certain times you might hate the person. You might be very angry how they were to you. So these fluctuations would happen, and it's okay. Process all kinds of emotion. If you're missing, process that emotion also. If you're angry or hurt because of what happened, process that also. If you're grieving over the loss, process that also. So these fluctuations would be there, and you can write down your thoughts. You can talk to a good empathetic friend or a professional about your feelings. It's very important, because otherwise the impacts of the toxic relationship, whether you were the less toxic or the more toxic, irrespective of that impact would stay with you, and you might go with that impact into your next relationship. So it's always better to process what happened, what was your role, what was the other person's role in creating the toxicity, processing your emotions, and then you can move on from the toxicity. Another important point is, do not isolate yourself. Especially after a toxic relationship, people might tend to be more towards a depressed mood, and they might feel like isolating themselves and just being by themselves. And plus, like I said, that mostly you have already distanced from your friends and family while being in the toxic relationship. So that might still continue. So actively seeking out support, be it by engaging in your work, engaging with your friends, family, hobbies. It's important not to isolate yourself, especially after a toxic.
That pain will consume us along with those thoughts.
Possibly.
Okay.
Because their emotions would be very intense. And I think last suggestion that I would give is, again, which is common for a general breakup also and a toxic relationship breakup also, is to have a no contact period sometimes people
Yeah.
contemplate that should we just be friends.
Yeah.
And even some of my clients also, like I notice this a lot, that they say कि आज breakup हुआ, let's be friends कल से. which doesn't work, which creates more problem than. And again, I'm not saying that it's impossible to be friends after a breakup, but there has to be a no contact period, which can vary from a month or maybe sometimes 6 months, whatever. Like there is no fixed duration, but a no contact period is necessary for you to again be in touch with your individuality. As an individual, how are you feeling? What are you contemplating? Are you able to find your closure? Otherwise, what happens? People decide, okay, now we'll be friends from tomorrow, and then they again bring those patterns, those expectations in the friendship, and they again starts to fight as friends now. Because the relationship doesn't end unless and until emotional attachment or emotional exchange of that intensity is still there. It's not a friendship, it is still a relationship.
Yeah, definitely. Wow, that was really insightful.
And just to add slightly more to it, which might sound a little harsh, how to contemplate that now we are ready to be friends. So ask yourself that, would you be comfortable to see your ex-partner with someone else romantically involved? If you would be comfortable, you are ready to be friends. If you might still some either other emotion, but more or less you can contain those feelings, then you are ready. But if you are feeling jealous or hurt or angry, then you are not ready for the friendship yet. Yeah, this is like a test to see if you're ready.
Yeah, I guess this is very important, like these little pointers. What I also heard like from someone somewhere, that when you're feeling little like ups and downs within yourself, that okay, maybe you had a dream and then you start going, oh, am I still in love with that person? I think we give too much importance to those little impulsive thoughts that we get once in a while, and then we go and act upon it. And I think at that moment, just being there with those feelings and just realizing that yes, it's just there. I don't have to give so much attention to it or start acting upon it. Like if I want to go talk again, or if I'm feeling unstable. I think at that time, just being there and just realizing that it's okay. These are just coming and going thoughts and feelings. I can just, instead of acting on it, we can just stay there. That can also help in those moments where we are actually feeling that impulse.
And I think it's important to recognize that if you were in a relationship, be it toxic or otherwise, it was an important part of your life. And in your mindset or in your mind, it will always stay an important part of your memory. Your feelings would be there. You might still miss the person after 2-3 years. You might still recall their positive, but there was a reason why it ended. But it's okay that even if it's part of your memory, if you once in a while there are feelings coming, that doesn't mean that you should go back to the relationship because there was a reason why it ended. But I think we need to normalize that some feelings would always, like for lifetime, would stay with you. So it's normal. Those are your emotions. You have to process them. And, and accepting that, okay, it's a part of me.
Yeah, definitely. I think you always talk about this fact that we should be ready to accept whatever we are feeling, whatever emotions we are experiencing, instead of just shutting them down immediately. We should be a little more open, accept them, embrace them a little, so that just we feel normal with our own emotions.
So again, the two extremes could be, one is to shut them down, other is to jump and act on them. That let me call her, what we call as drunk text, drunk calls.
Calling, Oh god. All these things have like become very common. People talk about them. It's become a dating lingo. We talk about drunk calling and then just rebound and constant patch-ups and breakups. All of these are toxic relationship patterns, but they are like so much in conversation these days.
And even with this, we can recognize how big of a problem and how much confusion is around all these topics.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think we might be talking about these topics in future videos as well, but because so much clarity is needed So many questions are around.
Yeah, exactly. And that is definitely true that we are going to talk about a lot more topics on this particular domain about relationships, because there's a lot to be discussed, lot to have more clarity on, so that we can genuinely create beautiful relationships where we embrace and accept every part of ourselves and each other, and learn to create that balance in our lives.
And I think the last statement I would make is that relationship, especially romantic relationship, be it before marriage or after marriage, it is like a very important part of our life. It can make our life very happy and very beautiful. At the same time, it has the potential to make our life hell. So it's very important to actively attend to what is happening in the relationship. It's extremely important. Sometimes people give too much priority to their career, and then after a while, after a duration of ignorance, they realize that relationship is messed up. And then that feeling itself start to affect the professional life. So it's better to recognize relationship is an important part of our life and give it its due importance.
Definitely. It was a wonderful conversation, and the beautiful insights that you bring into any simple topic that might be very confusing for our generation specifically just adds to more clarity and more understanding to me. I definitely can feel that, and to all our audience, I'm sure. And I would like to tell our audience that if you loved anything about our conversation that you can feel that you can implement in your life, that gave you a little more insight and understanding in your life right now, or you could help with this someone that you love who's going through a similar situation, please share this video with them, give it a like, and do let us know what you feel about it in the comments below. And we will get back to you with more content, with much more insights, much more beauty, deeper understanding and clarity for you and for all of us together, so that again, to hold our vision side, to reduce the stigma around these topics, around mental health, counseling and seeking support. And if you need any help regarding your mental health or that of your loved ones, do not forget to reach out to Coach for Mind, and also follow our Instagram page and LinkedIn for further updates. Goodbye.